Scott Morrison's approval ratings are plummeting. His interview with David Spears on the ABC at the weekend has drawn plenty of criticism. Peter Wilkinson, keeping politics out of this, from a corporate affairs perspective, there's 3 lessons we can learn from the Prime Minister's interview. The first being, if you're going to apologise, be sincere.
Yes, his behaviour generally, actually, since he got back from Hawaii. The difficulty with an apology, a qualified apology, often sounds like no apology at all, in the same way that the absence of the full truth often sounds like a lie. And so if you're going to apologise, you actually need to say sorry and stop. And the difficulty even with sorry these days is because it's so overused, you've got to say more. And we, in our business, say there are 3 elements to an apology that is not only genuine but heard to be genuine. The first is the sorry. The second is a commitment to do something as a result of being sorry. And the third is the outcome of that. So in the case of Mr. Morrison, if he wanted to apologise, he might say, and there are variations on this, but he might say, I am really sorry I went to Hawaii. It was a dreadful mistake, first. Second, as a result of that, I have reflected with my staff on what we should do in the future. That's the second. The third is, as a result of that, I will never be out of the country. I will never be off duty when my country needs me. I am here, committed to be a leader from now on.
And that's such a strong point. That third point is that personal message would resonate with Australians, and I think that's what Australians right now are crying out for.
And there must be no but, because with a but, as soon as you say but, it cancels out everything that's preceded it, because there's the qualification. And as we said at the beginning, a qualified apology often sounds like no apology at all.
And the second lesson is answer the question. It seems Mr. Morrison has great difficulty in answering a straightforward question. And it's a problem not just with Scott Morrison,
yes,
but many politicians from both sides of politics.
Have you ever wanted to throw shoes at the television because
all the time.
A bloody politician won't answer the question? It seems to be a habit in Canberra at the moment that people go straight to key messages. We don't know who's doing their media training or where they're getting it from.
Not from us.
The script is Q equals A plus M. Q equals answer, then message. So if you're asked a question, you've got to, even if you say, and then you either say yes, no, or even I refuse to answer that question because. But you've got to answer the question, then you can go to the justification. In the first question that David Spears asked of Mr. Morrison on Sunday morning was, you've acknowledged the anger but not acknowledged any fault on your part. Do you want to take that opportunity now? It was 2 minutes and 40 seconds of explaining what Mr. Morrison had done since he got back from Hawaii before he said, there are things on the ground that I could have handled better. But it was a heavily qualified explanation of why maybe he had made a mistake. And just on that point, just a nuance with interviews, if you end a question at a particular point, and end an answer at a particular point, it's almost certain the next question is going to lead off from there. So for instance, going back to the apology, is if you finish that, the third point is, as a result, I am going to be a better leader. The next question is going to be something, almost inevitably, is going to be something like, what's that mean for Australia? Or how does that apply now? Or da-da-da-da-da. So then you can make your speech about all the things you've done, calling in the army and the $2 billion and relief, mental health support and so on and so forth.
And then it helps you control the narrative and you take the interview where you want to take it.
You can have much more control of the narrative, yes.
And the third point is you can spend a lifetime building a reputation and you can lose that. It can vanish almost overnight, can't it, with one incident?
For most situations, for most CEOs, you're able to estimate what the recovery period is. You can say it's going to be 5 months or it's going to be 5 years, because in this situation, this is what happened with this person if he or she did this. Mr. Morrison's problem is being PM, and this happens for a lot of organisations too, such as banks and telecom companies. There's a whole raft of companies like this, where they actually go from issue to issue to issue. And so if you don't keep building up a bank of goodwill by doing good things and handling things well, you can't put jelly beans in the jar. In Mr. Morrison's case, he's had a couple of bad experiences. The handling of the AFP raids was one, where he lost a section of the community. Now with this situation, he's lost another section of the community that's going to take a long time to rebuild. Next month it's going to be another crisis. In April will be another one, and so it goes on. He's actually got to change his approach. The difficulty that Mr. Morrison has is Hawke and Howard were great leaders and empathetic leaders in a different era. This is a much more difficult era. Social media is toxic, globalisation, the speed of news, the challenge of journalists is much different now to how it was. So we need leaders who are much more empathetic, much more prepared to be vulnerable, much more transparent in their behaviour, and always on. There's no such thing as a holiday for a leader on a scheduled basis. So Easter doesn't mean they have 4 days off. Christmas doesn't mean there's a Christmas break. They have to take their breaks when there's a break in what's happening around them. And I think people who are better able to manage this, looking at it from outside, are leaders like Jacinda Ardern and Justin Trudeau. I think the way Justin Trudeau has handled the Iranian crisis with the Ukrainian air disaster is very empathetic from a distance. We're not in Canada, but seems very empathetic, and that, I suspect, is where future leaders need to be.
Absolutely, and we've seen Scott Morrison really struggle to connect with Australians when he's visited the victims of these devastating bushfires. The empathy really has struggled to connect with those.
Yeah, and there are good empathetic Australian leaders, CEOs, who can absolutely understand what we're saying.
Some good points there, Peter Wilkinson. Thank you. We'll see you next week.